Thank you so much for joining us online today. We so appreciate you checking out this message. We hope you enjoy it and are inspired to live more and more like Jesus Christ by His grace. If you would like to support the ministries of Rancho, you can do so at rancho.tv/giving. Set up a giving profile and a reoccurring gift. We'd sure appreciate that. Enjoy.
It's a relationship series, and every time we do a relationship series, we invite Elaine to come on up because, as you probably know by now, she has done a lot of good for so many people through Safe Harbor Counseling. Licensed therapy, that's, a Jesus-centered environment that has helped even our own family in incredible ways. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As well as a marriage retreat teacher. She has led small groups for us, and so she's done so much. So every time there's a series about relationships, it's like, Elaine, could you come up and help us out? And she says, yes, every time.
Thank you. I would love to.
Okay, great. How's Dad, by the way? We talked about he's struggling a little bit with health.
Yeah, he's doing better. I sadly almost lost my dad over the Christmas break. It was rough, but he's doing great.
He's pulling through. Tough guy.
Yes, tough guy.
Well, good. And so I know you're taking care of that. You got a lot on your mind, but you're still here joining us. So we are very, very thankful for that. So these are 6 conversations that will strengthen every relationship. So every week there's going to be a conversation that'll strengthen every relationship. And so today we're going to start with conversation number 1 that goes a little bit deeper than the surface level. Because the conversations start at the surface level quite a bit. Things like, what's up? How's it going? How is your day? These are just polite conversations, and there's a place for polite conversations.
Right. Absolutely. So surface level conversations, they are still important, right? And they signal kind of warmth, right? So when I say, how you doing? Or how's your day? It makes me approachable. It makes people really feel a little bit like you want to connect with them. However, a pleasantry doesn't always translate into depth. So if a relationship kind of just stays at that level, the pleasantry level, a person kind of really feels more generally known and they don't feel fully seen. Now that might be fine if it's like just an acquaintance and you're just at that level with them. But if you're closer to that person or you want a deeper relationship with them, you really want to go a little bit further, right? And a person needs to feel understood by you, that you actually emotionally make that attempt. Now, I think of surface level conversations as kind of like an on-ramp, right?
Yeah.
So we get on that freeway from that on-ramp, and a surface level conversation, it connects you, but we don't want it to be the final destination. We want more in deeper relationships.
Now, what's true about those deeper conversations is you can't just, create those out of the blue. There's got to be some depth of that. But what we're going to talk about today is how to create that through this phrase. How are you doing really?
Right.
Now, you know what that means, right? It's just words on a screen, but you know what that might feel like. You know what that might look like. When you're beyond the pleasantries, you're beyond the surface level, something is going on in somebody's life that you love, and you find the right time and the right place to say, hey, how are you doing really? Like, this isn't the time to exchange pleasantries. This is the time to go a little bit deeper. And what you had mentioned is that sometimes you keep things on the surface level. People can still feel very lonely, even though they're surrounded by people.
Yeah.
This is the kind of question, and this is the kind of conversation starter that says, hey, listen, you're not lonely. You're not on your own. I want to walk this journey with you at a deeper level.
Yeah, I think that question, like, how are you doing really, it's powerful. But it does require a certain trust or timing, because if you ask that question and you're kind of rushed, it doesn't make the person really feel very seen. Or if you're just trying to extract information, like you're being kind of a looky-loo or you want the dirt, right? Like you're like, so what's going on really? That can feel even invasive or even threatening, really. And so I think that it works best if you already have a certain level of connection and trust with that person, but also when you're giving a presence of like, hey, I'm not going to rush this conversation. Like, I really want to know, and I'm really kind of leaning in. Most people really want to open up. They really do. But they have to feel safe enough in your presence to be vulnerable. So again, it comes back to safety,
It is. You mentioned that last week, that communication, good, healthy communication is really about safety. If you don't have that safe foundation, you're not going to get to that deeper, stronger level. But part of this conversation about how you're doing really is about the heart. It is about the heart that people know whether you're there and really care. I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, Scott, how are you really? How's it really going on?" And I'm like, "Bro, you don't even know me. What are you doing? And we're not ready for this conversation, right?"
Yeah.
Or somebody says, "Hey, how are you doing really?" And it's not the time or the place. It's like, so there is a skill set around that. But more importantly, it is about the heart. Like, are you really caring for this person that gives you permission to have that conversation at the right time in the right place? It is about the heart.
Yeah, as you give that example, I went through this like really tough time in my life, and I had some neat people come beside me and really lean in and listen. But I had a couple people invite me to coffee, and I was like, I've never been to coffee with you before, and this feels a little weird, but maybe it was genuine. Who knows? Yeah, I think it's not so much about the questions you ask. I mean, those are good. It's not so much the words, it's more that they can feel your heart. And if your heart really shows that you want to provide them a presence, I think that makes that big difference. And that's so truly reflective of how Christ related to people, right? Like he was really present and he didn't talk over people and he listened and he wept. And we talked about that a little bit last week too. But he really also walked alongside people and he wasn't fixing or minimizing their pain. And if we can do that, if we can get into that place where we slow down and do that, I think we're really just capturing that presence that allows us to have the kind of relationships God truly intended us for.
And I think that's why we have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the Bible, because we see what Jesus did, how he treated people, how he came alongside people in their pain, and knowing that he still does that by his Spirit today, but he still does that by each other. It's God's Spirit in us that together asks, how are you doing really? That builds that trust over time, that has that heart of Christ that says, I really do care about you. We can be the continued ministry of Christ in each other's lives today. And that's pretty exciting. And that's what we're going to learn about this series.
I love it.
Thank you, Elaine.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
you very much. Let's tell Elaine, thank you very much for being a part of our world here. I think this kind of connection and this kind of conversation begins with empathy. I think this is all about empathy. Now, sadly, in our culture today, empathy is actually a controversial subject. I mean, if you Google empathy in political parties, wrangling about empathy, but it is the core human condition that allows us to connect relationally and allows us to connect heart to heart. I want to show you the definition of empathy: the ability to understand and experience the feelings of another. So it's not just about, oh yeah, I kind of understand what you're going through, but what they're going through, you're actually feeling yourself. That's empathy. Empathy is a trait that doesn't show up in the human experience till about 25 years old. It's one of the last things to develop in the brain. And so you might ask, well, why does a teenager seem to be, kind of self-centered? It's like, well, their brain hasn't fully developed to allow there to be a real depth of empathy. It's one of the later traits to come up in human development. And so by the time we're 25, we start to have the capacity to walk alongside, to feel what other people feel. But it doesn't necessarily mean we do it, and it doesn't necessarily mean we're good at it. So while our brain has capacity for empathy, it takes some time. It takes some skill. It takes some moments like we're doing today to say, all right, this is what empathy is. This is why it's so important. And here's how we can achieve it together. Now, we might think, okay, as a religious body, as a religious community, empathy should be, kind of natural for religious people because, the heart of God is one of empathy and compassion, but that's not the way it always works. In fact, kind of sadly in our culture, it's religious communities that can have, in some instances, a tendency to have a lack of empathy. If you want to know more about that, there's a great book I'm going to put on the screen for 5 seconds. It's called The End of Empathy. I read this, took that down, somebody recommended it, and I'm like, okay, that is really good. And it critiques kind of a religious movement and empathy, and there's some tragic things in there. All right, we can get this off the screen. But empathy is what it's all about. You cannot get to a depth of relationship if we are unable to connect with somebody at that emotional level, not just understanding, but really feeling what they feel. I did not grow up as an empathetic person. I grew up in a household that had some struggles, and so I put up some walls. I put up emotional walls. With a dysfunctional household, that's kind of what you tend to do. You either kind of collapse emotionally, or you put up walls and say, nothing's going to touch me. And that's what I chose. I literally intentionally chose that nothing in this family is going to touch me emotionally. So I put up gigantic walls. You're welcome, Jenny Treadway, for the person you married. Right? So it's hard. You kind of grow up self-defensive, protecting your emotions, so you're not comfortable in that realm. And then the religious community I was raised in was great people, but did not lean into empathy, kind of leaned into, hey, this is right doctrine, this is right behavior. We're on God's team and they are not. And so that tends to be kind of judgmental, us and them. It tends to be unempathetic. So I had an unempathetic upbringing and then kind of an unempathetic religious experience. And so I was not very empathetic, and then became a youth pastor. And so I did what other people had done in my life. Here's the right doctrine. Here's the right way to live. Here's the good. Here's the bad. Here's the right. Here's the wrong. Here's God's team and the enemy's team. I mean, that's kind of what it was. And that was normal in the 80s and into the 90s. Until one of my favorite youth group, young men, got a tragic accident as a garage fire, a gasoline fire, and he was trying to save his house. And as a result, got second and third degree burns all over his hands, his arms, his upper torso, his neck, his face. And to walk alongside somebody for the very first time who was suffering, and I mean suffering, and I spare you all the details, but being with him as they're wire brushing his wounds, head to toe, and the sounds, I mean, it's just, and the sights, it's just tough. For the very first time, I felt empathy. I could point to that moment to say, that's the very first time I felt pain with another person's pain. And then started opening myself up to this journey, that this isn't just about, doctrine and right or wrong and good or bad, God's team, us versus them. It's about none of that. It's really about human beings. And so started this journey of discovering that this Jesus, who I said I followed, the most compassionate, empathetic person who welcomed everybody, welcomed them, and welcomed those who were judged, and welcomed those who were considered wrong or immoral or whatever else. Jesus welcomed all of them and cared for every single one of them. It's like, well, that's the person I follow, right? That's Jesus. So I'm going to open myself up to that journey. And since then, just have had the privilege of walking alongside hundreds of other people in their pain and trying, the best I can to empathize and to walk alongside and to have these conversations. How are you doing really? And then during times in my own life when there have been struggles, and to have people who really care come alongside me and our family and to say, how are you doing really? And to know that they care, and to sit down and to have these conversations that just give life and strength and courage. This is what the Apostle Paul says in Galatians 6:2. He says, I'm going to sum up the whole deal, right? And you might think, well, if he sums it up in one verse, why are we here for 30 minutes listening to you every Sunday? Well, yeah, that's a good question. But here's the one verse, Galatians 6:2. He sums everything up. Share each other's burdens, and in this way, obey the law of Christ. That's it. Jesus left us with one law. Love God, love others. Love your neighbor as yourself. Bear each other's burdens. That's it. That is the law of Christ. That is all we need. That's what it means to follow Christ. It's not getting all the right doctrines, all the right this, all the right that, all the right positions. It's about loving people the way God loves us in Jesus Christ. That's the law of Christ. And if you think you're too important to help someone, you're only fooling yourself. You're not that important, right? The Apostle Paul just lays it out, black and white, blunt language. I would say often, if not always, the reason why we are not empathetic toward other people is that we think we're more important than them. We might not think it in the front of our brains. We might not say it. Those words may not be swirling around our heads. But the reality is that if we're more focused on ourselves and not focused on others, it's because we think we are more valuable than others. And the Apostle Paul says that should not be. I mean, Jesus Christ considered other people treasures and sacrificed himself to care for other people, so we should follow him and bear each other's burdens. And to put it simply, we follow Jesus, it means we humanize everything. We humanize everything. And this means no matter what issue we're dealing with, whether it's a political issue, social issue, cultural issue, if it's a doctrinal issue, whatever the issues are, whatever the things are, whatever the disagreements are, humanize it all. because they're human beings who have these positions for a specific reason. There's a story in their life that has led them to certain places, to believe certain things, to have certain convictions, even to do things. So if somebody is living a life that is, let's say, a criminal life, they've chosen crime, and we can say, oh, they're just criminals, just lock them up, and fine, there's got to be justice. But humanize this. Why did they do what they do? What's their story? And if we can know the story and the human being that's behind the positions and behind the thinking and behind the actions, then we're really following Christ. Humanize everything and humanize everyone. We tend to humanize people that are close to us, who look like us, who believe like us, and share the same politics. That's just human nature. It's tribalism. It's basic human nature. We tend to humanize the people that are most like us, and we dehumanize the people that are most unlike us. Jesus didn't do that. In fact, the way Jesus lived his life, he broke every barrier. He lifted up every single person, particularly the person who was treated less valuable. Jesus found them, built relationships with them, asked them, how are you doing really? And walked alongside of them and elevated them. Everyone equally treasured. One of the most famous parables Jesus ever shared was the parable of the Good Samaritan. And you know the story perhaps. A Jewish man is robbed, beaten, and left for dead. A Jewish man robbed, beaten, and left for dead. A Jewish priest, Luke 10:31, comes along, sees this person lying there, crosses to the other side of the road and passes him by. That's a parable, just a story, but there's a point behind the story. The point is that even the most religious people can miss the heart of God, because the heart of God is about people. And this religious person might have said, oh, crime, the issue, crime in the streets. So there's another statistic, there's another crime, not really my problem, and moving on, right? It's an issue, it's not a person, it's an issue. Then here comes the Samaritan, Luke 10:30, going over to this man. The Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Jews hated the Samaritans. Samaritans hated the Jews for hundreds of years. Hated each other. The issues, the race, the ethnicity, the politics, the religion is so different. They thought our blood is different. It's actually not. Samaritans and Jewish blood is exactly the same. But they didn't know that. They didn't believe that. And to them, that was a big deal, right? But it's the Samaritan who came over to the Jewish man, put him on his own donkey, took him to an inn where he cared for him with his own money. And Jesus says, who's the hero? The hero is the Samaritan. And everybody gasps and falls over. Like, Jesus, how can you say that? You're a Jewish man, and you're saying the Samaritan? Different religion, different culture, different race, different ethnicity, different positions, different politics. You're saying he's the hero? Jesus says, yes, because he loved, because he served, because he came alongside and said, how are you doing really? Jewish man on the ground, beaten, robbed, left for dead. Not very well, actually. Thanks for asking. And then he did something about it. He did something about it. Humanize everything. I'd put it this way, try, and this is a discipline, this is an intentional journey that each of us could be on. Try to see every human being the way God sees them. Try to see every human being the way God sees them. And how does God see them? Well, God sees them like he sees us. And I love Psalm 139:14 because it just gives a window into how God sees us. The person writing the song, thank you, God, for making me so wonderfully complex. It sounds a little arrogant, but it's not just about him. It's about everybody, right? God, thank you for making us so complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. How precious are your thoughts about me, oh God, that cannot be numbered. In other words, the one writing the song is saying, I'm a big deal in God's eyes. I'm a treasure in God's eyes, right? I'm a child of God. I am so complex and I am so wonderful. He goes on to say, inside and out, I am precious to you. God, when you think of me, you think that's my treasure, my precious treasure. And God, your thoughts about me are always for me, always on me, and always good. When I rise, when I lie down, when I'm awake, when I'm sleeping, the one who's writing this song is saying, I am a big deal in God's eyes. I'm his treasure, and he can't stop thinking about me. That's very healthy. That's the gospel. Jesus proved it. But then what's even better is if that's how we think about other people. We see other people, all of them, Whether they're like us or not, with us or not, believe the same things we do or not, every single person on the face of this earth, a treasure in God's eyes, so you're a treasure in my eyes. Even strangers in the street. The one who actually took your Trader Joe parking space. Treasure in God's eyes. So how do we treat them? How do we think about them? Good for them. They got the spot. I'm going to wander around this parking lot for another 45 minutes. Right? Good for them. But I'm serious. I'm not, it's kind of joking, but I'm serious. It's like every single person that we see, stranger, friend, family member, a treasure in God's eyes, a treasure to me. God thinks positive thoughts towards them. I'm going to think positive thoughts towards them, right? This is the discipline and the journey of following Jesus. So for the next 15, maybe 17 minutes, we'll talk about 4 ways to increase empathy and deepen every relationship. You ready? This is going to radically change some of your lives. I pinky promise you. 1, notice the struggle. Notice the struggle. This is not easy. Notice when people struggle. It's not easy because typically we live our lives and what's swirling around our heads, and this is just normal and natural for all of us, myself included, what's swirling around our heads is the stuff that we have to do and our perspectives of things and our positions of things. That's just the normal human condition. We think about ourselves a lot. Secondarily, we think about our family a lot, our cluster, our clan a lot. It's just normal and it's just natural. So it takes a little bit of effort and energy to follow the way of Jesus and look at everybody through the eyes of God and to notice when they struggle. Here's a couple of examples. Your teenager gets a little bit distant, a little bit defiant, is in their room a lot more. How do we think of that? Just teenagers, just a phase. No, notice the struggle. Those things don't happen on accident. Everything happens for a reason. What is the reason? My teenager is a little grumpy, a little defiant, going in their room more. What's behind that, right? They're ready for a conversation. How are you doing really? Right time, right place. How about a spouse gets quiet? Maybe stares off in the distance, gets a little more solemn, maybe a little more sad at times. Maybe they get a little snappy. What's their problem? I mean, that's easy to do, even for our own family member. What's their problem? Get over it. Something is happening in their lives and they're giving you little cues, right, to pick up on, maybe to have that conversation. How are you doing really? How about a friend? You got a friend group and you're texting back and forth and you're meeting up here and there and you're going out to lunch or whatever, playing whatever, and one friend just kind of is drifting. They're not responding to the text thread. They're not showing up for the lunch. How's it going? Fine. Well, they're not fine. Something is going on. They're ready for a conversation. How are you doing really? A coworker or a neighbor may not even be a friend of yours, right? But you're around them a lot. You see them a lot. You wave. How's it going? The surface stuff, right? The polite stuff. But then you just notice some things about your coworker or your neighbor. They're getting snappy. They're getting grumpy. They're not engaged as much in conversation. They just look a little off. Something in their eyes is a little dull. They don't have that spark, right? Maybe they're ready for a conversation. How are you doing really? So it's about noticing the struggle. When you hear the words people want to be seen, that's what it means. Notice the human and notice the struggle. Something happened that was kind of funny to me last week. We were having a meeting in the conference room, West Campus upstairs, and a bunch of people in the room and finished up a meeting and people are filing out. And Cherie, Cherie, she does Wilgar, she's out there, she runs the place. Cherie goes over to 3 picture frames that we have in the conference room and she straightens every one of them. She goes, it drives me crazy. Just over time, there's a bunch of doors in that room. Over time, the doors, are hitting the walls and the wall is shaking. And just over time, those picture frames get a little bit off. And nobody notices but Cherie, right? She notices. So every once in a while, she goes up to the wall and straightens them up. Life happens to all of us, and we get a little off kilter, right? Just stuff happens. Life happens, relationship happens, work, stressors, finances, whatever it is, anxieties about this and that, and we get a little off kilter. We need somebody noticing that we're at a level and saying, how are you doing really? It takes a lot for us to be the person to notice when somebody gets a little off kilter, all right? It takes a lot to notice that because I guarantee if you went home today and you walked in your door and says, is every one of my picture frames level? You'd be shocked what a tragedy your house is. Everything's not good. But we just let it go because just over time, things, whatever, we don't even notice it. So it takes intentionality to say, I'm going to notice the people around me. Family, friends, strangers. I'm going to notice, is something different? Are they giving me cues? Are they giving me signals, right? Jesus was tuned in, absolutely tuned in to the smallest detail. One of the stories we see about Jesus is a story of him being crushed by people, but noticing one woman. Mark 5, all the people followed, crowding all around Jesus. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years had spent everything she had to pay them, but had gotten no better. She was suffering on her own in a crowd of people. She touched the hem of Jesus' clothing, and Jesus noticed her. Verse 30, Jesus turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my robe?" The disciples are like, "You're surrounded by thousands of people. What do you mean, who touched my robe?" Found the woman, empathized with her, felt her pain, talked with her, and he did something about it, right? This is Jesus noticing even the woman in a crowd of thousands. Notice the little things, especially with those who may be struggling in silence. They're a little off kilter, but we don't know. We don't see. Try to have the eyes of Jesus in your life. Notice the little things. I'm going to give you a few things perhaps to notice. And as I go through this list, you might have names come to your mind. Oh yeah, I see this in this person or that person. Notice when moods change. Notice when moods change. Notice when somebody, just is not quite the way they were. Notice when the spark in their eye kind of dulls. Notice when behavior gets self-destructive. They start getting more isolated, maybe drinking more, going out later, hanging out with the wrong crowd, lack of sleep. Notice these things. Notice when someone stops taking care of themselves. They stop caring maybe about how they look or their eating patterns, or they're getting lazy. They're doing some self-destructive things. Notice when someone has chronic health problems. They're complaining more about maybe headaches or chronic pains or a lot of doctor's appointments. These are cues. Something's happening there, right? Notice when someone is dealing with a big change in life. So it could be they seem fine, but there was a move. Or like in our situation, we're about to be empty nesters. There are already people coming to my wife say, "How are you doing really?" Right? This is going to be a big deal. Yes, it's a big deal, and thank you for caring. And right, so notice when people are going through big things in life. Notice when someone is dealing with a loved one who is struggling. So their circumstances might be fine, but someone they love is not fine, which means they're not fine. So just notice those kinds of things. Notice when someone is scattered. They can't concentrate. They struggle remembering things. They're showing up late. They're not doing their job at work. These are all cues. Notice them. Notice when someone is increasingly negative, right? Now, some people are just born negative. That's just who you are. But if they're more negative, or somebody who was positive and full of life is just starting to dull a little bit, notice those things, and at the right time, at the right place, how are you doing really? Do you want to talk? Elaine said earlier that most people are eager to talk. Most people are eager to have that conversation. It's just, is there somebody out there who cares enough to have that conversation? And has built just a little bit of trust so that when you ask that question, I know you mean it, and I know you love me. And yeah, actually, now that you mention it, it's been a season. All right, well, let's talk about it. Instantaneously, you got a partner. Instantaneously, you got love. Instantaneously, you got somebody bearing your burdens. So really, it's about noticing. Second, engage with forewarning. Engage that conversation with forewarning. Do not sideswipe somebody with this, because that's a big conversation, right? Politeness is good. How you doing? Good, fine, good, fine. At the right time, with forewarning, invite someone to that serious conversation. How are you doing really? If you just pull alongside somebody, hey, let's talk about your feelings and your experience, and they're not ready for it, it's going to feel like an attack. Women, hear me for a minute. This is a little stereotypical, and I hate this, but hear me out. Ladies, you often love to desire to have the conversation right now. We need to talk about it right now. We have to deal with this. We have to settle this right now. You don't. You don't. Men, this is stereotypical. I hate it, but it's true generally. Men need time to get ready for these conversations, right? So you're already doing it. Men need time to get ready for these conversations. So if you're chasing him down the hallway, no, let's talk about it now. He's like, I'm not ready. It feels like an attack. Because it feels like an attack, he'll attack back just to, it's human nature, all right? We're going to talk about you guys later too. But forewarn. Hey, we really do need to talk about this. When is a good time? When's a good time of day? When is a good day of the week? So I mentioned it's budget season for Jenny and I, and that's not easy. You're talking about spending patterns, and it's so easy to judge and bite, and well, you did this, and well, you did this, and we're looking at all the, the positives, you're looking at the negatives, you're looking at inflation and bills and all college and all this stuff. It's not fun. None of us wake up every day. I can't wait to have a budget conversation. And none of it, but it has to happen. And so, I'm the one who usually kind of sets up that conversation in January. Jenny's the one who works our month-to-month, day-to-day. She does a great job at that. I'm more the big picture strategic planning guy. And so we have our two financial worlds, and they get together in January, and we both know what needs to happen. And so I give forewarning. Hey, it's January. I know. Hey, in the next couple weeks, yep. Monday's good. Yeah, it's probably best. Next Monday, yeah, probably. 10 o'clock Monday, all right. There's forewarning. We're both ready. We're both have that, sit down and take a deep breath and let's go through it, right? We're ready for those conversations. Engage with forewarning. The Apostle Paul did this great in the Bible. He was responsible for about 13 churches, and he traveled, right? And now there's no internet, no phone, no nothing, and so you just basically have lack of communication. He goes in, he plants a church, and it's always chaotic. Church life is just fun, especially back then. It's multiracial, multi-ethnic, so there's racism going on. There are accusations and injustice and how you use money and behavior problems and doctrinal disagreements. It's just, that's welcome to church. And there's no way to resolve that quickly because he's traveling all over Asia Minor, Turkey, and Southern Europe. He's all over the place, but he hears rumors that this church is having a problem, and he writes them letters in advance, and he gives them forewarning. Here's one example, 1 Corinthians 4:19. I will come soon, and then I'm going to find out when I get there. It's like a parent. When I get there, I'm going to find out whether arrogant people just give pretentious speeches or whether they really have God's power. Right? He knows there's a problem in this church, and he's giving you fair warning. When I show up, be ready for this conversation. So if you're going to have a conversation that is of like emotional depth or some serious conversation, give plenty of forewarning at the best day of the week, best time of day, and get it done. Last two are quick. Notice the struggles, engage with forewarning, and listen intently and ask questions. Nobody really wants to hear your opinion on most things. It's just the way it is, right? That's not relationship. Airing out our opinions is not relationship, but asking questions is so beautiful because when you ask somebody questions, you're really valuing their perspective, their experience. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Why are you feeling this, right? And you're really about, as we talked about last week, understanding, getting to a point of understanding where you're coming from. Now, if anybody had the right to share their opinions, it would be Jesus. Son of God, Word of God, the full expression of God. If anybody's opinion was worth just sharing to the world, it was Jesus, and he did that at times. But he asked a ton of questions. In fact, I counted and read them all. He asked 135 questions. Thank God for AI. That took me 20 seconds. He asked 135 questions. Serious, like, how are you doing really questions? Why are you afraid? Why do you doubt? What do you think? What is it you want? What would you like me to do for you? Why are you thinking this way? Why is there so much emotion and sorrow in this room? Why are you having so much trouble with this? He's asking real, powerful questions. Some of them are, why are you so dull of thinking? Maybe we don't do that one. But he was confronting some injustice in the world, right? So he had to do that. But these are questions Jesus is asking to get to a point of understanding. How are you doing really, right? We talked about the ladies. Men, do not fix anything. If you're in a serious conversation, don't fix it. Men are notorious at just fixing things. Like, why don't you just do this, this, and this? Never thought about that, dude. It's like nobody wants that from you, right? But we like to fix. We like to fix by nature. And most of the time it is well-intended. But I will say as a man, we also want to kind of be done with the words and the emotion. Quickest possible way. Just get it done, check off the box, and move on with our lives, right? So there's a little discomfort in getting to that kind of depth of relationship. So don't fix. How are you doing really? You know, a woman in your life, whether it's your spouse or your kid or whatever, neighbor, coworker, they might reveal something to you. We are going to want to fix it. Oh, have you tried this? Have you read that book? Have you done the thing? That's not what we're doing. That doesn't build a relationship, right? Guys, try not to fix. Ask questions. Ask questions. And you might find that relationship and trust actually builds. Finally, help tangibly as you can. Help tangibly as you can. So you've noticed something's a little off. You ask the question, how are you doing really? Right time, right place. You're listening, mouth closed, ears open, listening. And then when your mouth does open, you're asking good questions. Your relationship and trust is building. Now is there something you could do about it? Not for a quick fix, but to truly help. There's a couple things I want to ask you not to do, not to say. I'm going to ask you not to say, let me know if there's anything you need. I'm going to ask you to never say that for the rest of your life. It's well intended. We say it all the time. I have said it a million times. Somebody's struggling, let me know if there's anything you need. Here's the problem with that sentence. The problem with that sentence is we're not coming up with any specific creative ways to help you. We're basically saying, I'm not going to do that. And we're basically saying to a hurting person to let me know how to help them. It's on them now to tell me what they need. That's not really fair in the situation. It's well intended. I know we don't mean it like that, but that is how it comes across. And people will never do this. They just won't. Somebody's suffering and they say, gosh, I just need somebody can they just pick up this one thing for me? They're not going to say, hey, you said, let me know if there's anything you need. I actually need this picked up on Tuesday. That's not going to happen, ever. So stop saying it. What I'd also encourage you not to say is, I'll pray for you. So you just heard a pastor say, do not say, I'll pray for you. And I'll explain why in a minute. It comes across as kind of trite. Here is what we can do that I think is a little bit better. All this is well intended from a good heart, but I think there's some things that we can do that are better. Instead of saying, let me know if there's anything you need, we could say, can I do this specific thing to help? Can I go grocery shopping for you? That's huge. Now, they may not actually need you to go grocery shopping, but you've heard them, you listen, you understand, you're thinking, gosh, I think they might need somebody to go to the grocery store. Can I do your grocery shopping this week for you? That is a real offer for real help. And they might say, no, I actually don't need that, but since you mentioned it, I do need that thing picked up on Tuesday. Is there any way you have time to do it? Of course. Right now you're in real tangible help, and they will actually get help if you just reframe that question. Can I do this specific thing? Because I know you, understand you, know where you're coming from, and I'm thinking you might need this. You may not, you'll let me know, and then you'll let me know how I can help. And then instead of saying, I'll pray for you, how about we say, I prayed for you this morning? There's a big difference. Thoughts and prayers. Well, how many times have we heard that? Thoughts and prayers, praying. It's just noise. But if you tell somebody, let's say a coworker, confided in you. You asked, how are you doing really? They confided in you. And they shared something about one of their kids. And let's say their kid's name is Jack. And you come alongside this coworker and you said, hey, listen, I just want you to know that I prayed for Jack this morning. Got the name, got the struggle, and here's what I prayed. I prayed for God's peace in Jack's life. I prayed for wisdom in you as you walk with Jack. Just want you to know that. That's a big deal. Just say, I'll pray for you, even though it's well-meaning, it doesn't have the impact of saying, I actually prayed for you by name, and I prayed this for your life. It's a big deal. That starts getting relationships pretty deep. So, is there a how are you doing really conversation that you should have with someone you love when the time is right? We gave you a bunch of tools today. This will be online here in a couple of days. Give you kind of a roadmap to have those conversations. There's some name that popped up today that you need to have this conversation with. And then lastly, do you need a how are you doing really conversation with somebody who loves you? You're struggling. You've been giving cues to the world, and nobody's asking the question. You could do one of two things. You could tell someone that you love and trust in a safe zone, I just need you to know I'm not doing well. You could just proactively say it, and that person will love you and care for you through it. Or if you don't have that person, info@rancho.tv. We got a bunch of great people over here. Safe Harbor, tons of help for you to get you to a spot where you feel cared for because you're worth it. Let's close in prayer. Feel free to stand as we pray. God, we thank you for our time together today. Thank you that your love is here, your grace is here through Jesus, your spirit is here. But God, we are designed to be cared for, not just invisibly by your presence, but visibly by people who love us and know us and can come alongside of us and truly care from the heart of Christ and say, how are you doing really? I've noticed that things may not be quite right. And God, so give us that ministry of Jesus. Give us the ability to make the right time in the right place and to listen well and to ask questions the way Jesus did and to bring tangible help in time of need. God, that we might be the living, breathing presence of Jesus Christ to the world around us. And God, for those here today who are the ones who are struggling, the ones who are wrestling through all kinds of issues, God, I pray that you would bring alongside of them people who will love them, care for them, and help them, and that they would reach out, maybe even to us, and ask for that kind of help. How that we could be the presence of Christ to each other, make this world a better place. In Jesus' name we pray, and everybody said, amen. Thank you so much for walking this journey with us. We look forward to seeing you next week.